Welcome to the Basic Werewash Training Course, AutoClaw Services e-learning online classes. In this module, we're going to answer the question, how do I calculate that? We're going to cover our basic units of measurements that we use in our day-to-day work and the breaking down of use costs. Before we can start breaking down use costs, first we have to learn the basic units of measurements that we use in our daily jobs. A pint is 16 ounces. 2 pints equals 1 quart. A quart is 32 ounces. 4 quarts equals 1 gallon. 1 gallon is 128 ounces. 1 gallon is also 3,785 cubic centimeters. 1 gallon is also equal to 231 cubic inches. 1 cc is equal to 1 milliliter. 1 fluid ounce is equal to 29.57 cc's, or we round this to 30 to make calculations easier. All Mach products are 128 ounces. Mach Endurance, 128 ounce. Mach DryMate Plus, 128 ounces. All Ultra products are 84.5 ounces. Ultra QA, 84.5. Ultra Degrease, 84.5. A 5-gallon container is 640 ounces. 2.5-gallon containers, 320 ounces. And a 1-gallon container, 128 ounces. We're going to learn how to calculate use costs. Calculating use costs is actually a very simple calculation. We're going to use 2 examples through this program. Example number 1 is going to be using a gallon product. In this case, we're going to use Ultimo. Our second example is going to be on Ultra products. We're going to use Ultra pot and pan. In breaking down use costs, it is basically into 3 different sections. The first section is we take the cost of the product divided by the container size and we get our cost per ounce. Next, we take that cost per ounce, we multiply it by our dilution ratio, and we get our first use cost per gallon. And lastly, we take our use cost per gallon, we multiply or divide based on how the product's being used, and we get our final use costs. Let's break down each one of these sections to learn how these work. To break down the cost of the AutoClaw product, we use this following formula. Cost of the product divided by the container size equals your cost per ounce. And in this case of our gallon product, we're going to use Ultimo. The cost per gallon is $14.85. We divide it by the container size of 128 ounces per gallon, and it comes out to 11.6 cents per ounce. Let's take a look at that again. This time we're going to use Ultra pot and pan. Ultra pot and pan costs $46.65 per cap. We divide it by the container size of 84.5 ounces, and we get our cost per ounce of 55.2 cents per ounce. When diluting chemicals, the ratio is normally expressed as chemical to water. The smaller number will always be the amount of chemical, and the larger number always the amount of water. Example of dilution ratios is 1 to 2, 1 to 7, 1 to 32. AutoClaw has already calculated the dilution ratio for most effective and efficient use. When multiple amounts are given, they are based on light, medium, or heavy soil applications. An example of this would be Room Sense 300. The usage is 5 to 15 ounces per gallon. However, understanding how the dilution ratio works and how to calculate these numbers can become useful when determining the correct metering tip when using the autoclave dispensing system. Let's use the example of 1 to 7. When working with ratios, the sum of the parts always equals the whole. So when we add the two sides of the ratio together, we get the sum. In this case, a 1 to 7 ratio is 1 plus 7 equals 8 total parts. We divide the total parts from the total amount of solution you want to produce. In this case, we're going to use an example of creating 1 gallon of product. We take 128 ounces, we divide it by our 8 parts, and it equals to 16 ounces for each part. Next, we subtract the total ounces of the chemical from the amount of the solution. In this case, 128 ounces. We subtract the 1 part, which is 16 ounces of chemical, to 112 ounces of water. This gives us our 1 to 7 ratio. The next step in calculating use cost is to take the cost per ounce, multiplying by the ounces needed per gallon of water. Again, we go back to our gallon example of Ultimo. We determined that the cost per ounce was 11.6 cents. Our dilution ratio is going to be 2 ounces per gallon of water. This gives us our first use cost to the customer at 23.2 cents per gallon. Let's take a look at this again using Ultra Pot and Pan. We determined on Ultra Pot and Pan that our cost per ounce was 55.2 cents per ounce. We're going to use a half an ounce per gallon of water as our dilution ratio. That gives us a use cost to the customer of 27.6 cents per gallon of water. Before getting into the actual use cost, first we have to answer the question, how do we plan on using the product? Are we going to put it in quart bottles? Are we going to fill up a mop bucket, 3-compartment sinks, or even a bus pan? To determine the number of gallons in a given area, such as a sink, a wash tank, a bus pan, etc., we use the formula of the length times the width times the depth divided by 231, which is our cubic inches per gallon. This will give us the number of gallons in a given area. To use our example of the sink as we're looking at it, the sink is 15 inches long, and we multiply that by 14 inches wide. That gives us a total of 210. Now the sink itself is 12 inches deep. We want the average water fill. In this case, the average water fill depth is going to be 10 inches. So now we take our 210, we multiply it by 10, and we come out with 2,100. We divide this total number by 231, the cubic inches in a gallon, and our total gallons of water within this given area is 9 gallons. Actual amount is 9.09. We round it to 9 gallons. The last step in calculating the actual use cost to the customer is based on how the product will be used. Here we use our use cost per gallon. We multiply or divide that based on how the product's to be used. That gives us our final actual use cost to the customer. In this case, we're still going to use the example of Ultimo. Our use cost per gallon to the customer was 23.2 cents per gallon. We're going to put this into 4 quarts. We divide our 23.2 cents divided by 4, and it gives the customer an actual final use cost of 5.8 cents a quart. Let's look at our example of again using Ultra Pot and Pan. Our use cost to the customer was 27.6 cents per gallon. In this case, we're filling our sink to 9 gallons of water. We'll multiply the 27.6 cents by 9, and it gives our final actual use cost to the customer at $2.48 per sink. So now that we've broke down our calculations for use cost, let's put it back together again. First, we take our cost per product, we divide that by the container size. This gives us our cost per ounce. Next, we take our cost per ounce, we multiply it by our dilution ratio, and it gives us our first use cost per gallon. Lastly, we take our use cost per gallon, we multiply or divide this by how the product is going to be used. And this gives us our final use cost to the customer. In this module, you'll find practice guides. You'll have a pricing and dilution ratio sheet. You'll also have a worksheet to practice doing use costs. To complete this module, complete these worksheets and make sure that we send these in. The benefit to selling products is by demonstrating a product and breaking down the cost to the customer. Remember, a customer can't buy a product this cheap and that we're delivering it, servicing it, and maintaining the dispensing system all at this cost. Learn more about units of measurements or breaking down use costs by talking to your managers, regional manager or vice president, or contact the training center for more information.